Thanks, everyone. I wish I was actually talking about like making pancakes, because like this would be an awesome place to make pancakes. So I'm going to kind of go through this presentation between a few different presentations and websites. So bear with me as I'm kind of flipping around. I'll be walking around a little bit and talking from the podium. So I'm going to start off talking about a few projects that kind of led up to this Tillicum Crossing project, and then I'm going to kind of wrap up about showing some specific ways that I tied it into teaching students graphic design, color theory, things like that. So I've been doing a few public art projects over the past I would say 7 years, and I've been doing a lot of outdoor projection. So that's my main medium that I work in is video, and video is a really great medium. You may have seen some projection mapping where you do projection in the public space on walls. This was a series of projects at the Venice Art Crawl. And this was a kind of an audio reactive piece. So it was taking audio from the environment, which was then moving those cubes. So it's this kind of as people are walking by, as cars are driving by, it's kind of transforming this real-time sort of graphics environment. So it's just a small clip of it. I'll play it again really quick. The last part we don't see here, there's this great scene where people are like taking selfies in front of it. So it really becomes this place where people can be really playful in the public space. And then I started a series of collaborations with this group, Merge Conceptual Design. They're out of Santa Monica. And this was a project, again, kind of stepping away from video as the main medium and getting into light. And video is light-based in a lot of ways, but starting to work with different kinds of lighting systems. So this is a project this is in the San Francisco airport, the United Terminal. There's a permanent installation, and there's these 27 spheres, and they are kind of undulating in this kind of pattern. So this was like a kind of mock-up that I made using Adobe After Effects, because it's very hard to visualize these things before they're installed, and they're multi-year projects. So one of the things I do is show students some of the tools that I work with to mock things up. So this is using a software that we use in the curriculum, and it's a great way to talk about how to do a prototype for a larger project. So this is just, you can see the spheres are kind of slowly fading in and out. It's more of like a plan view. And what happens is when you see this project, when you look at it, it's a kind of flat matte paint that's illuminated by an LED light. And so it looks like it's flat. It looks like it's not hollow, but they're actually hollow. But as the lights dim, you sort of fall into it. It kind of creates this space where you kind of move into it. And the idea is to kind of create these sort of slices of sky, different sort of sunset colors, some kind of more standard colors, and to give people a space to be introspective as they're waiting for their flight or they're stranded there. And the scale of them are quite large. I mean, the biggest one is about this big and is right over a chair, so you can kind of just look up into it. So it was a really interesting project to work on, and here's kind of an example of like a dim to illuminated sort of view. And here is, should be a video. There we go. This is just a little video kind of showing it in place. And what you don't see is the kind of background story about making it. You see those ceiling tiles up there? All the electronics that ran this, which is part of what I designed, are up in the ceiling. So a lot of the work was done on a lift, kind of way up there, installing the work. But it was the kind of thing that was hard to prototype, again, because it was the scale so large. So using, here's actually how we prototyped it in the initial stages with a laptop and a fiberglass mock-up. So that was really all we were able to do, was just to do one at a time, And I had a little thing with little small LEDs to kind of program it. So it's a combination of color, electronics, and kind of bring them together into this public art installation. And I'll kind of go, so here's just some of the sort of prototyping stuff that I did along the way. And yes, that's you can see where that was. That was an early prototype version, and then that's the final version. So electronics is not my main medium either, but it's something that I did when I was in graduate school, and it's something that I do in different ways in my work. And then this was another project this is in San Diego with the same team. And this one, I'll just kind of bring this one up because it started to get into data. And that's one of the big things that the main project was about. This uses wave buoy data from offshore of San Diego. And if you see on the left, they're floating out there. They have little transmitters, and they transmit the status of what's happening in the ocean. So on the right, you can see sort of, looks like a spreadsheet, but that shows the wave height, the water temperature, the swell direction, and various aspects. So all that information can be used to control lighting. And so that's what this project was about. It was about bringing the offshore kelp field to the airport. There's this kelp field that people go diving at and fishing and stuff, and so there's this kelp motif in this project, so we really wanted to bring the ocean into the experience. So at night, the lights come up at sunset, and then whatever's happening in the ocean is reflected in the color and movement of the lights. So this kind of got me into, I'd done this in different ways in different projects, but this kind of got it into a more kind of concrete way of doing it. This is just an early mock-up. Again, I talk a lot with my students about mocking up bigger projects using tools, and this is not even what it wound up looking like, but they bought it on this. So originally it was going to be video projection, because that's my medium, and so I was thinking of ways to kind of create this dynamic video thing, but we had to then use architectural lighting fixtures, which are like theatrical lighting things, and so it changed what we could do, and we wound up going on a more graphic thing. So I made these in Adobe Illustrator, and so I talked to students about how these tools can be used for different things, right? Adobe Illustrator is not just useful for a trifold brochure, but it can be used for, creative parts of different projects. And here's a little bit about how it looks. It's this kind of watery kind of feel with this kelp motif of light overlaid with metal on glass, and it's like different kinds of metal and sort of a translucent glass with that kelp motif. And it has, one of the cool things is it has two different views. This is down on the plaza view, but then you can, when you go up, that's like the check-in area where you come off the roadway and you check in, and there's a shot of it in a second here. There we go. So then it's like an inverse of the experience. So it has these kind of two sides, and there's actually two of these on at the airport. So this runs in San Diego every night right now, and it just kind of is always, the speed is based on the period of the waves, so kind of getting into the science of what's going on in the ocean and how to translate that into a aesthetic experience. And the color is dictated by, I believe, the swell direction. So that project got me into this project, which just launched in September. It's been a multi-year project and another collaboration. I was working with the lighting manufacturers, the sales guy for the other project, and we happened to be in San Francisco at the same time, and he invited me over to meet Anna Murch and Doug Hollis, who are public artists, and they were going to be working with Martin, the company, with their lights, and so we got introduced, and he told them about the data project, and what they wanted to do with this project was connect the lighting on this bridge with the river, the Willamette River, which is a very significant waterway in Portland historically, and Portland is like the city of bridges, right? There's like bridges everywhere. This is a really significant bridge because it's probably one of the only, there's a few bridges built every year in the country, and this is one of the only ones. And it's there's no cars, so it's bicycle, public transit, and light rail. So it's very, there's not I think that's like the only bridge in the country possibly that does not have full automobile access. So the idea here was to figure out a way to get data from the river. Is there data we can get, and how to use that to create an interesting experience. On a kind of sad note on this, Anna Murch passed away during the project, and so that really kind of changed things. It was so there were some kind of hardships along the way, but we I think really were able to put this thing together. As she originally was the genesis behind this lighting idea, so I kind of had to carry on our conversations and turn it into something. So you can see these are just some kind of like tests along the way. One of the things that started to happen here was that we didn't totally anticipate was the weather in Portland. The atmosphere really comes down, it gets cloudy, and these lights start to really illuminate the atmosphere and the water in the air. So you can see here that kind of illumination above. I think we probably have angered any astronomers in Portland because we've added quite a lot of light pollution. So that's like one thing that I kind of, little question mark I had at the tail end. I'm like, well, what about that? But it's, so this is kind of what it started to look like. Just want to check the time. Okay, cool, we got a lot of time. I can go a little slower. So I started to look at like the data, and the U.S. Geological Survey has all kinds of monitoring stations all over the country. They monitor waterways, inland waterways, whereas NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they do the ocean and things like that. So I started looking at charts and digging through old data, historical data about what happens, and we start to see, here's the temperature displayed over a year, and we can see the temperature rising and falling seasonally, right? In the July through September, we get up to nearly 75 degrees, and then we get down to 40s or something like that in the winter. So there is a seasonal change. You get more water flow in the spring as everything's melting. The level of the river rises, right? It's at different times of the year. It's faster depending on the height. And then another aspect of it is that it is it's a river that's very strongly affected by the tide due to its proximity to the ocean. So it's very strongly affected by the tide and the river height. So you have like all these different kind of parameters that can be tapped into. And so that was really a lot of the work here, was just trying to figure out how to make this into something visually interesting. And then starting to think about like color, and how to kind of map color. And these were just some kind of early kind of looks at how we would map color to it. And this is where color theory comes in. And this is where I can kind of start to talk with students about color theory. This is using like an analogous color spread. So the middle color here is like, let's say, the temperature of the river. And then you can split it off on the hue wheel just a little bit so that they're still kind of harmonious. And that's an analogous color scheme. And that's a good thing to show students how to work with analogous color, because it's a good way to have a good color palette that's pleasing, right? Quick way. And for this project, it made it very modular. So as the river changed temperature, I had a few colors that would always be harmonious or kind of within a certain range. And so that was how we were approaching it. And then this secondary color is kind of like a highlight accent color that kind of comes in and out at different stages, just to kind of give it a little bit more contrast, a little bit more variation, a little bit more happening. And this is how it, this is like actually the kind of software that drives it. So this is the kind of stuff that more advanced, so I don't have a lot of opportunity to teach this kind of stuff to our students, but I show them what I do and kind of where those pathways go, where they can go with some of these things they're learning and how they can apply it in different ways. This software is actually was originally designed for computer music. It's a program called Max MSP, which is It looks just like boxes and noodles, but you can use it to create really interesting things. In this context, I'm using it just purely for processing data. But it could be used to process data associated with MIDI or audio processing, things like that. And that's how it's been used traditionally, and that's actually how I started to get into it, was doing more kind of computer music stuff. So this is kind of what it looks like. It looks kind of crazy, but you can see there's all the parameters that I'm grabbing. Discharge, which is the amount of water moving. Gauge height, which is the height of the river. Temperature of the river. The tide, which fluctuates greatly. And then velocity, which is just the overall speed of the river. So that's like 5 different data points that I kind of mix together in different ways to make it happen. And this is all done by getting that data is sort of using a technique called web scraping, where I find the data output on the USGS site, and then I write a little program that finds the exact thing I'm looking for and regularly, so it can find it the same place every time. And that's all it does. It just looks there every 10 minutes, it looks for new data, it pulls it down, and then it puts it into the system. And you can see the colors there that are represented. Then the other side of this that we're not seeing is a whole lighting console, where it's more like a theatrical lighting setup. And so this sends information to the lighting console that then drives the lights. So it's a series of things and multiple disciplines, right? I mean, I think that's the other thing that I stress with my students is when you're out there in the real world, you're going to be working with people that are from other disciplines. And so I use some of these projects where, I'm working with lighting engineers, I'm working with theatrical lighting board programmers, I'm working with public art commissions, I'm working with other artists, collaborating with other artists. That's always a skill that's really good to get students into early. Yes, sir?
All this information is all public knowledge.
Yeah.
If not, you have to work with the government in order to do this.
No, I didn't ask. I just used it because it is all public. Yeah, it's all totally public. And then, so it's all totally publicly available, and anyone can use it. And it's a service that the government provides, right? So it's our tax money hard at work. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple things here. Well, here's the actual program running, and you can see it's a little bit different. The colors are a little bit different. If we look at, and here's just a little snapshot of some of the data coming in. So the USGS data is kind of slow. It's like it doesn't update that frequently, but you'll see the numbers on the right, that column on the right. That's the NOAA regional tide station, which actually updates every 6 minutes, which is pretty fantastic. That's a pretty good rate. And the reason for that is for early tsunami warning, right? So it serves a real practical function, because if they see the tide suddenly drop, they know that there's possibly a tsunami coming, right? So that could be interesting at night with the bridge, like to visually see what might happen. Would that be? It might be a little tsunami warning visually, Yeah, six minutes later. Whoops. There's a lot of kind of complicated stuff here, but it's really just it's kind of like programming, like computer programming, but it's in a kind of more visual way. They call these visual programming environments, and it's a great way, I think, to introduce students to some of these ideas of logic in programming, because it's important to know some aspects of this if you're working in digital media. So let me show you a video clip. Couple images here. Just one of the things about working on lighting projects is you get no sleep because you can't do it in the day. So I spent some time up in Portland over the last few years, and it was start at sunset and then you stop at sunrise. So it was all-nighters, kind of out there. We had an RV parked in a muddy lot with with a generator and a lighting board inside, and that's how we were really kind of fine-tuning the programming. Because again, how do you mock something like this up? How do you pre-visualize it? We did have a few tools at our disposal, a 3D model that had an approximation, but it wasn't really that close. So it was always a struggle to figure out how to visualize it and present it to the client. So I do have a couple things here. Let's see here. Yeah, so like this was a little bit of, so this is actually this is the 3D, this is a screen capture of the 3D model. So these were some of the ways that we were communicating with the client, and showing them how it worked. So it actually did okay, but it was again still very difficult. And then the other level of things I was doing were using again Adobe After Effects and just trying to pre-visualize how this might work. The kind of movement across the span, across the cables, and that kind of inward movement is something we really wanted. We wanted kind of this meeting in the center, this kind of motion towards the center or out from the center, and showing different kind of speeds. But this was really just using, kind of pretty crude graphic ideas to describe it. And it was a little scary because it was like, can we really do something that looks like this? And it was, it did work. I mean, it is very low resolution because there's only so many lights. There's really not that many lights, so you can't do something as sort of high resolution as this. But it at least allowed us to talk about color and movement and things like that. So let me go ahead and show, this is some documentation of the project before it opened. So we had the ability to, throughout the night, just kind of run through some different kind of settings. The video quality is not fantastic. It's really actually hard to document on video, even on photography. But this doesn't look that great, but you can kind of get the idea. So I spent a night kind of running around and calling up different presets and we kind of made some kind of backup presets in case the data goes down. You can like push a button and get a fall look or a winter look or a summer look. So this is kind of what it looks like. You can kind of see that motion in towards the center. And here on this one, you can see this kind of purple color that kind of washes in at some point that adds that little accent color. And once we started actually playing with the actual architecture, some interesting things really started to happen. This kind of shape, it's got kind of a peak in the column, and we'd get a lot of interesting things happening where it'll be one color on one side and another color on the other side, giving it really kind of highlighting the dimension of this of the columns. So so let's see what time. All right, good. We got a lot of time. And this is another part of it that so Doug Hollis, Doug and Anna were husband and wife, and Doug is more of a sculptural artist, and this is under the bridge on each side. On one side, there's a bike path that goes right next to it, and on the other side, they're building a bike path. But it's this kind of like sonic dish, so it kind of takes the sound and focuses it in different ways, and so you can kind of hang out under there, and it's pretty interesting spot, and it's just the same lighting pattern but displayed over the dish, the length of that area. When we were doing it, when we were out there doing testing, one night we saw across the river that there were a bunch of people on bikes, because all throughout the night in Portland, people are riding bikes like down the bike paths, and they're always out on bikes. So some people came by with their bikes and they had a boom box and they were like, set up a rave, basically, like under the bridge. And so we kind of had fun and we made a little light show for them, and we did some fun stuff. But there were all kinds of like weird things like that happened, and a lot of unique Portland things. Like if anyone's been to Portland, if you know of Voodoo Donuts.
Yes.
So, yeah, so we got the bucket of Voodoo Donuts at like 3 in the morning, because they sell these buckets of like the leftover donuts, So got a lot of nice kind of like Portland character during the process, which was a lot of fun. I didn't get to see much of Portland because I was sleeping during the day mostly. Here's some different shots. So then the next thing that kind of happened in this was when we were getting closer to the opening and everyone was happy with the look, and I had been I had been able to show them by because that program I built it in is kind of like a music kind of based on music and MIDI. I was able to like hook up a little controller so I could kind of take control of the parameters and kind of emulate what it might look like under different circumstances, and just in real time. So I was able to just sit there and like twiddle away at the dials and make it do things. And so as we're getting closer to the opening, they wanted to really have like an event. They wanted to do something, they didn't want someone just to, flip a switch and it turns on. They wanted to do something a little bit more. So they asked me if I would be willing to do some kind of a live performance. And I was like, yeah, sure, that's great. Because I've done a lot of like live video, and I used to play saxophone. I've done improvisation, so kind of performing live is something I'm fairly comfortable with. And so we went ahead and did that. And the right next to the bridge is a classical radio station, All Classical, which is a really great radio station. And they were going to do it in conjunction where they would broadcast the music, a classical piece, and then there would be an accompanying light show. And we chose a piece by John Adams, American composer, and kind of had some qualities that would work with how the bridge looks. Because I didn't want to do a whole new light show. I wanted it to really showcase the full parameters that you would see maybe over a year. Because when you go for one night, you're only going to see kind of one sliver of it. It's really about living with it in the city and seeing it change over the year. Because the main colors are affected by the temperature, right? So the hue shift happens throughout the year. The speed of change, that kind of stuff happens on a little bit, throughout the night, but not quite as noticeable as the color change. So the piece really matched kind of what we could do with the current setting. So I'll play for you. This is on the Oregon Live. They have a little bit of documentation up on here. There's a bunch of stuff out on YouTube and whatnot, but this I thought just was a good little shot. So I'll play a little bit of it. I don't think I'll show all of it, but this will just kind of give you a little sense of what the opening was like. And this kind of practice, this kind of like real-time digital media is something that I'm really interested in my own work, and it's something that I'm interested in sharing with my students. Like we do this, this class where we look at kind of game engines and that kind of technology as a way to create real-time experiences. So there's crossover between the work I do as an artist and then how I bring things to the classroom to show them different possibilities. I'll just kind of, I'm going to kind of move to the end. We kind of get the idea, so I'm kind of, the beginning part, just kind of like introducing a little bit of light, just to kind of highlight a little bit of the architecture, and then kind of come in with the crescendo of the music. And then at the end, we'll just take a look at the last minute here. So kind of faster movement with the intensity of the music. That was it. And then I'll just kind of show one more thing to wrap us up here. This is, so the kind of piece that you haven't really seen here, this is how I rehearsed it. So this, you can see here, this is actually, that image there is the, what the lighting control software looks like. So each one of those little colorful boxes, those represent lights. So we're looking top down on the bridge, and so the way that this is called pixel mapping. So each pixel is a light. So whatever color is on that pixel will be sent out by the light. So I kind of approached this. I kind of a very unorthodox way to do this kind of thing. I kind of approached like doing this like working in a motion graphics program like After Effects, where I was kind of layering different different kind of colors and generators. I'll just play this. You can kind of see sort of how it works. But this is how the actual, it functions on a normal basis. This just happens to be the rehearsal kind of view. But let me get to where there's some color. Right, so this is kind of what, happens behind the scenes in the lighting console. So the information I send to the lighting console changes the color, the speed of that animation, the kind of contrast within the animation, and then all those things together come out in the lights on the bridge. So it's, there's lots of different kind of aspects to this, but this is basically what's happening. It's sort of a generative visual that's created, a graphic. So, and then that's translated into lights via the lighting controller. So we're at quarter till, so I'll kind of wrap up here. If anyone has any questions, I could field some questions.
Does any of the buoys ever go down and then?
Well, it's interesting. During the recession, NOAA actually decommissioned the main buoy I wanted to use. So I had to pick a secondary one. It was close by, but it was not the one I really wanted to use. So it can happen. Storms knock them out, So these kind of things you have to kind of make sure that they're still up, And I do have I'll have little maintenance contracts on some of these, so I can kind of keep up on that stuff.
I assume this was really well received.
Yeah. And the performance was, they have this open yard where they have events, and there were a couple thousand people there. And the bridge itself was just very highly anticipated. But along the way, the photographic community really embraced the testing process, because they would come out at night and they would do long exposures, and then we started seeing drones flying around. So it's people got really excited about it, and I think really the function of it is really the exciting part, that people can bike across the river there stuff like that. But they do really appreciate the lights and got a lot of great comments.
Now do something for the LA River.
LA River, and Long Beach has a this open data thing going on where they're releasing a lot of their data, and so I've been kind of like thinking about how to tap into some of that possibility. Yeah, well, yeah. There's that the new bridge they're doing down there too.
Have you, speaking of that, have you talked to anybody at the board about eliminating?
I have not. No, I have not. Just because I just finished it. Yeah. Yeah. I know. There's a lot of ideas, and also the other thing I like too are the little islands. You know, those like illuminated could be pretty interesting as well, because that's where people can really see it. So, so I've got kind of ideas. I have to pace myself a little bit because just getting through this one was a lot, and then kind of now looking for the next. It was about 2.5, almost 3 years. And a lot of it was just kind of like, figuring, early tests, early experiments, figuring out how to put the things together. And it's not like, I kind of fit it, I have to fit it in, it's, just where I can. So,
Well, I had awesome faculty, Art Brown,